In primary school, I was really into science, which is quite ironic for those of you that know me, because I ended up doing a political economy degree, which has nothing to do with science. But anyway, I quite liked space and plants and just things about the world and how they were working. And I remember probably in year 3 or year 4 or something like that, summer's day, ice cream is pretty awesome. What did people do before fridges existed? Just thought in my mind, but it went because I didn't know how to find out the answer and I didn't really care enough. I found out a few years later, and apparently before the 1800s, ice was actually a luxury. It wasn't something that everybody had access to. A guy by the name of Tudor, he sat down with a friend, and they were one of the wealthy-ish enough people to actually have the luxury of enjoying ice and ice cream and having cold beverages. And they thought how it would be great to actually get this to go out and give this to people around the world, in really hot countries in particular. It was a kind of comment in passing, but he took this quite seriously and he wanted to make something of it. Because he had this luxury, but most of the world didn't. And the moment they do, this is going to change their lives. Like, the world is going to be a different place. It's really funny speaking about it now, but it wasn't a thing before. And so what he wanted to do was he wanted to go out into the really cold parts of the world and take lumps of ice, ship them in relatively good containers over to the West Indies, for example. But this idea of shipping ice was so strange that the ships that would normally transfer cargo from A to B said, no, what are you doing? Like ice, what's the point? And so what he ended up having to do was he had to buy his own ship because nobody was willing enough to give this really stupid idea a chance. And so he did, and he arrived, and he was really happy with these blocks of ice because he was about to change the world with it. But people weren't having it. Like, we don't need it. Our lives are okay as they are. He was convinced that the moment you try it, you're not going to go back because it's going to change how you work and how you think and how you experience drinks and everything like that, but people weren't willing to give it a chance. And he didn't know what to do. And it took a good 10 years, actually, for anything to materialize and for him to make anything. But this guy was pretty crazy, and I think between 1809 to 1814, he went to prison like 3 times. And he was running away from the police and a bunch of other crazy things. So he wasn't a normal person. But it began to reach the stage where people realized that, hey, this works. Because he came up with an idea that now when I go back, I won't just tell them, hey, I've got something great. No. I'm going to give it to them. I'm going to let them try it for free for the first time. I'm going to teach the guys at the bars to make drinks cold and how people should be making ice cream. And very, very quickly, he did something that very few people in the world do. He created an industry. The people didn't know that they needed this or that they wanted this. But now that it's there, it's, whoa. What were we thinking before? And so his company of selling ice from A to B began to grow really, really quickly. And he ended up shifting tens of thousands of tons of ice around the world. Something that people had never experienced before. Like ice. Who would have thought it? But then, as he began to make quite a bit of money, and his company grew really, really well, as you see around you, what usually happens is, hey, this guy's making money, I can do the same thing as them. I mean, why not? It's working for them, right? And so that's exactly what happened. And so there were so many different companies that were thinking, okay, they are making money now like this. let me do the same thing. Really, really important lesson here. In terms of thinking and how we should be thinking, we shouldn't think just about where we are now, but where we need to be and where we will be in the future. And I'll tell you why. Because as these businesses were really excited at the prospects of making money, because they've seen others do it, very few people thought about the next step. What was that next step? Fridge, freezers. Most of these people didn't think about, wait, what will happen if people can produce ice at home? The moment that happens, this industry almost entirely collapses. The thinking wasn't there. And so, in 1940, around 5 million fridge and freezers were sold around the world. What this did was it almost killed the industry of transporting ice from one country to another because it's no longer needed. And you see this happening so many times. Who remembers Nokia? What happened to them? Anybody ever used like Ask Jeeves or Yahoo as a search engine before? All right? It like doesn't exist anymore because there's the constant thinking of when, like now. But never really thinking about, wait, hold on, what about tomorrow? And what's going to happen to the world in 1 year or in 5 years or in 10 years? What problems need to be solved? That's the thinking that we should have. Going back to me in primary school, there's another thought that I had because of my somewhat obsession with science at the time. My obsession with science, by the way, was killed off by Harry Potter. That's when I fell in love with reading. But I was really upset because I felt like I was born at the wrong time. The internet already exists. Some pretty cool search engines are about. Computers have already been invented. Lights exist. If only I was born earlier, maybe I could have been involved in these other projects that others had made. And this was probably back in 2002 or something like that. Since then, Bluetooth technology came out, heart transplants, Facebook, Snapchat, YouTube. I was pretty wrong. Because innovation constantly happens. And I genuinely believe that the people that will change the world exist in the room today. Like they're here. And it's just about getting your mindset in the right place to know that you can, because there's no reason why you can't. And so, on this note, to speak a bit about why we wanted to create this event, how to start a startup. We had the idea of working with startups for a solid year now, I think. But we held it off because the time wasn't right. We needed to learn a bit more ourselves. But now I believe it's reached a stage where there is so much interest and demand from people around us. In particular, by the way, with people from low-income backgrounds and minority backgrounds who don't have access to the opportunities that maybe they should have or they could have. And what we need to do is we need to give a platform to really great people like those that we have on our panel to share their own experiences. And they're completely different. They have different backgrounds, they speak different languages, they've studied different subjects, but it doesn't matter. Because one of the greatest things that I believe people can achieve is to turn something or to create something from nothing. Because if you just think about it for a moment, there are individuals in the world who, without them, certain experiences will not be there. They wouldn't exist anymore. But these experiences exist at the hands of individuals. They're not special humans. They are people like me and they are people like you. One of my favorite quotes is, looking at the world that we have today, it's made up of what? Of people. the problems that we see, the good things that we see, the great things that we see, everything has been produced by someone. That someone should be you.